Hi, this is Ann Sermons Gillis, and I am on the board of the Theosophical Order of Service. And I've got a treat for you today. What we're doing in the Theosophical Order of Service is interviewing contemporary Theosophists and finding out what is their story, what is their life, how did they get to Theosophy? And it's amazing what so many of them have been through. And a lot of these people are speakers for the Theosophical Society. And even though we get to hear talks about what they believe and different things that they are experts in, we don't hear their life story. So today we're going to hear the life story of a very fascinating woman. She's been a Theosophist for over 40 years. She's a mental health therapist. She's a national speaker. Some of her lectures are Filling the Hole in the Soul, where she combines psychology and theosophy. Also, 7 Proven Ways to Become Your Higher Self. And this is one that I've listened to, is very good. And just many others. She's a fascinating woman. You're going to hear a lot more from her right now. Let me introduce and welcome Sue Prescott. Sue, welcome.
Oh, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for taking time out, because I know that you're in the process of moving, so that's a big deal, and you're moving. We'll talk about that in a minute. So where were you born, and where did you grow up?
Sure. Well, I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then my parents moved to Everett, Washington, just north of Seattle. And I grew up in Everett and then went to school, the University of Washington in Seattle. So mainly Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, the cold zone.
Yes, right.
Oh, well, and where are you living now, and where are you going to?
Yes. So I live in Seattle, and I've been very fortunate to be accepted to live at Crotona School of Theosophy in Ojai, California. So the Crotona School gives programs throughout the year, and I've attended there often. And then I gave a program in May of this year where the idea came up to be a resident there. So they have houses in this spiritual community that people can rent and live there. So I'm going to be moving just in a couple months to Crotona, and really looking forward to it. And Seattle's wonderful. I have family here, but it's a lot of gray clouds because of the way the mountains kind of gather them up. So I'm looking forward to a little more sunshine, as well as the spiritual community there.
Yes, well, you're moving from some really interesting weather to the sunshine, and you'll be surrounded by theosophy. That sounds absolutely wonderful. Makes me want to go. Now, I want to ask you, were you raised in any kind of religion? And if so, what kind of religion were you raised in?
Sure. Well, I was raised Lutheran. That's a part of Christianity. And my church was not fundamentalist, so it was fairly open and very a nice way to grow up with that. My parents were very open philosophically, so that it was easy for me to learn about the principles of philosophy, but also about religious studies. And one thing I do like to mention, I really enjoyed the Bible studies that we had in our church. And one that really struck me was St. Paul's verse when he was writing the Philippians, and he spoke about God, or the higher power, as the peace which passeth understanding. And so I particularly love that quote because it matched my sense of God when I was growing up, of what I sensed it was. I sensed it was a power. And so if I can just add one more thing about my upbringing and Lutheran and Christianity, Christ was referred to as the Son of God. And it always seemed to be not right to me when I would hear about this or pray and that kind of thing, because I felt that God was beyond the physical plane. And so calling Christ God or the Son of God just didn't really match my sense of it. So when I was taught about theosophy, which was fabulous, I learned that Christ was one of the masters of wisdom that are on earth in our human history in various cultures to teach us about spiritual concepts and how to live together better. So that was just really a wonderful way to augment my upbringing.
Well, that's quite insightful. Some people have to overcome their religion. In other words, it's a roadblock on their spiritual path. And some people are in a religion that they use as a stepping stone to another way of seeing. Do you feel like what you were raised in, was that a roadblock or was that a stepping stone for you?
Oh, just definitely a stepping stone. And the prayer, that I can get choked up thinking about the way confirmation went in our church. My aunt was the pianist, and so we would go up for confirmation, and it was a symbolic, or go up for, I'm actually forgetting the word, where you take some wine and some bread.
Communion.
Yeah, communion. Confirmation is the word. Communion. And we would go up and there was a prayerful, and we would have the small piece of unleavened bread in our mouths and some wine representing the sacrifice that Jesus Christ did for us. And then my aunt would have just beautiful organ music, soft and meditative as we walked back to our seats. So that was a very moving experience for me when I was growing up. So theosophy and the meditation that they taught was just wonderful to go forward with that.
So you had the sacraments, that's where you're introduced to sacraments, and also to ritual. And it seems like they provided quite a backdrop for a wonderful experience for you when you were young.
Definitely.
So that was where you really first started your spiritual path. It seems like you were questioning at that point, and you were quite intuitive to catch on to the fact that maybe everything wasn't quite right. There was a lot that was right and that you've taken with you, but there were some things that you just didn't buy. And so how did you start this spiritual search? What was that like for you?
Well, there were some key points in my life as a child. So there's an organization called Campfire Girls, and I participated in that. And when I was young, really young, it was called Bluebirds. And so we did that. We had our rituals and we had our service projects, and I did like the service projects that we did, and we would sell campfire mints also. But then Campfire Girls for high school girls had what was called Horizon Club, and so that's where I could participate with the whole organization, but as an older teenager. And in the Horizon Club, we had to do a service project or a research project or volunteering in some way. And the topic I chose from my mom's recommendation was religion. And so it was really interesting. So I learned about various religions and did some work at the church, which was really nice. So that kind of helped me, another stepping stone, as you say.
Well, I'm going to throw out a question you were not expecting, and that was, about ethics. Were you taught any kind of morality? What was your sense of good and bad? Did you have a sense that you might be punished if you did anything wrong? Just answer any of those or speak to any.
Sure. Well, my church did not have a strong emphasis on hell and fire and brimstone, so there wasn't any fear around if you sinned, so to speak. But the 10 Commandments was the background, and they just made sense to me. We're supposed to treat each other with respect, and certainly not kill. And then the first commandment, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That didn't make a lot of sense in a way. And I learned a little bit about other religions and the gods, but as I learned further, it's like there's nothing higher than this infinite divine, which is that sense or that power of God. So luckily, I didn't have anything that was scary or difficult, just more the ethics of treating each other well, the golden rule, treating others as we would want to be treated.
That's wonderful. So many people have things that they have to overcome, and they really close down on their spiritual part because of fear, guilt, shame, anger, all those kinds of things. And so it looks like you segued, somehow you found Theosophy. Could you tell us about that?
Well, that was wonderful. And you might have heard the expression, I thank my karma for various things. And that totally is the case with my meeting or learning about Theosophy. So when I was at the School of Social Work getting my master's degree, I had an internship at what was called Family Counseling Service. And then I was lucky enough, after about a 6-month wait, looking for jobs after I was done with my degree, I was hired at Family Counseling Service. And one of my coworkers was Linda Jo Pym. And so she was a second generation theosophist. And at the time, self-healing was really popular. And I did a time-limited group of self-healing where I taught people how to meditate and relax and kind of meditate about their body's natural healing to be activated, and also to reduce stress and that kind of thing. So, but Linda Jo Pym, she could tell from that healing group that I was open philosophically, potentially, and she told me about Theosophy. And she introduced Theosophy by this teacher named Harry Van Gelder. Now, he's the brother of Dora Kuntz, who's a theosophist, and she wrote the book, The Human Aura. And she was the clairvoyant working with Dr. Dolores Krieger, developing therapeutic touch. So Harry Van Gelder was my introduction to Theosophy. And if I could just go a little further, so Harry led meditation retreats up on Orcas Island. That's in the San Juans in the northwest of Washington State. And it was called Camp Indralaya. And his meditation retreats were a week long. And I started off meeting him by just going to a lecture at Linda Jo's house. And then it was fabulous. I loved the meditation and Harry's teaching. So I went to Camp Indralaya for years for this week-long seminar. So Harry would have us meditate to Beethoven. And like the first movement of the Fifth Symphony or something would be very powerful. And he described how the timpanis, or the deep brass instruments would help break us, blocks in ourselves or stress and that kind of thing. And then the second movements were often slow and meditative. They were fabulous. And then Harry would teach us about the spiritual environment when we were meditating like that, and spoke about the angelic kingdom, and he called them devas. That's the Sanskrit word for the angelic angels, that would be around us when we meditated. And he would emphasize they were using us as transformers for energy on the physical plane. So anyway, no, I'm very grateful.
That just blew my mind, because I just had a conversation with someone about this very, very topic. So it's kind of blowing my mind that you said that. And Deva, in Sanskrit means shining light. So I'll just bring that up. But that's just fascinating. Continue.
Oh, well, again, another way I got into Theosophy, Linda Jo Pym organized when I was in my 20s at our Seattle Lodge, a workshop by Dora Kuntz called Therapeutic Touch for Counselors. And it was fabulous. And people from neighboring states came. They flew in, and Dora taught us how to think of the therapeutic touch principles in our minds and send this energy to people as we were working with them. So it was absolutely a fantastic experience with the learning that, understanding a little bit more. So both Dora and Harry taught about the levels of consciousness within a human being. Can I go a little further and just
absolutely.
go with that?
Please, please.
So it was fabulous. And these mirror Theosophical Societies or the Theosophies teaching about the levels of consciousness. So we have our physical body, and that's very known. And then within the body is the etheric double. And that extends off the body, maybe a couple inches. And it's been called the health aura. And you can actually sense it with your hands. You know, if you're put your hands close, you can feel the heat, but also kind of a springiness or a bounce.
Let me ask you, are you saying health like is the HEALTH or?
Yes,
okay.
Health aura, right. And people who can see this field say that if people aren't healthy, the energy seems to droop off of them. So that's the etheric. Then there's the next level of consciousness is prana. And that's chi in China or ki in Japan. And that's off of our bodies, helping, well, Harry would say that we can't live except by prana. Prana is the vitality within us, the energy that makes us alive. And so we eat food, but prana is what makes us alive. So anyway, so that's the prana in our physical form. But then Harry and Dora were so good with teaching, then we have the emotional plane, which is separate from the body, but not of the mind yet. And then with the mental body, the mind, we have our everyday mind, which is, you know, what we live in the world with. We plan our schedules and go after things we want to accomplish or do our work. But our higher mind is the intuition and higher reasoning. And so then just to top off the levels of consciousness is the Atman, and that's the infinite divine or the God in everything, in every human being and everything on the earth. So then when Harry and Dora would teach us meditation, we would be taught to calm the physical body and calm the mind, certainly the emotions as well, to open to the higher mind. And that's what we could sense this spirituality around us, particularly with the help of the devas. So anyway, a long description.
Did they give any way when you say calm the mind, was that through the music, or did they just say calm the mind and then there was quiet, or how did they do that?
Well, music really helped, but Harry would have us meditate, and then we would have a discussion, and he might give a little lecture at 10 minutes or so of something. And then we had always a lot of questions. He would just let us ask him everything we wanted to know. Harry emphasized that we should ask why. Always look within to understand our motivations for things. Like, why do I feel not so warm and friendly with someone? Why do I have an enemy? Or why does my mood go down? What is going on with me? The more insight we can have with our personalities allows us to break up the blocks that get in the way of touching the peace of the higher self. So that was a major teaching that he gave.
I'm assuming that you're able to use this in your current counseling practice. These things
right.
you learned.
Totally. You're right on that. That's kind of the principle of therapy in a way, that self-understanding. Oh, and if I could just throw in another thing, we have in therapy now a term wise mind for the intuition and all. Whereas, in the 90s, from the University of Washington, Marsha Lenehan developed dialectical behavioral therapy. So that's a term for a type of therapy that helps people regulate their emotions and tolerate stress and that kind of thing. But it's getting in touch with this wise mind, which is our intuition or our higher self, that might be used in theosophy or various religions, but we were not supposed to be religious counselors in my work. So the wise mind is a perfect term for people to use to think about, okay, what is my own sense of something, my own intuitive direction here, or what's right and wrong for me. So anyway, that's really is just a wonderful thing. It matches theosophy perfectly. But
Yes, a form of inquiry.
Mm-hmm,
Personal inquiry really shows us the depth of who we are. Hey, I'm wondering, I actually really envy you because I studied therapeutic touch and used it many, many years ago, back in the 70s, I guess, maybe when the book first came out, Dolores Krager's book, but it was from a book. We got a people together, and then we worked with it, one-on-one, and found it very powerful and very successful in working with people. And I'm just wondering if you would share just a little bit more of how it was to work with and know Dora Kuntz, because she's just such a big character in the Theosophical movement. I'm just wondering your impressions of her.
Oh, well, Dora was quite a teacher. She, okay, so just to tell you a little bit about the therapeutic touch, she would have various people in the medical field come, or anyone who wanted to learn therapeutic touch, and there would be a patient or a person who would act as the person that the therapeutic touch would be practiced on. So in therapeutic touch, there's an unruffling of the field where like I mentioned, the prana, the etheric and the prana is leaving the body. And if we're in pain or dealing with disease or stress even, the therapeutic touch might help unruffle the field and relax the person. So Dora would be watching, and she also taught how to send colors or get in touch with like the healing color of blue, a deep blue. And she would guide people, and she could see what they were doing because of her clairvoyance. And she'd say, no, that's right, you're doing fine. Or she'd say, no, that's not the energy at all to use. And then she would advise them in very clear language. In fact, sometimes bluntly, if they were doing it wrong, so to speak, and then she'd have them get in touch with their own sense of peace, and then open to the universal healing energy. So, and then when we were counselors learning this, it was just getting in touch within ourselves. We didn't do anything with our hands. So she was quite a powerhouse.
And her personality she was really a consummate teacher, it sounds like.
Yes, right.
And the clairvoyance really upped that a notch.
Oh, yes.
So have you used therapeutic touch with any of your clients?
Yes. So, well, it kind of happens naturally because of that early training back in my 20s. So when I work with people, I'm listening a lot. And that's when I get in touch with kind of my own center. And I have a feeling of compassion because they're sharing with me some things that have been difficult for them. So that's where the therapeutic touch comes in, where I would be sending peace, and I don't do it with intention anymore. It just kind of happens because of that keying in with them. Now it's both in the office or on Zoom. With Zoom, people adjusted really quickly where they could sense, and they could see by my expression and all, they could sense that caring and compassion. So it luckily didn't interfere.
Well, now I remember, I think I remember that because it's been so many years since I practiced it. Probably in 40 years, but as I remember, you actually do touch the people, right?
Well, yes. However, I didn't learn the therapeutic touch with touching. And so,
And that's why it was for therapeutic touch for counselors.
yeah, right.
Okay, got it, got it. Well, you've mentioned two really wonderful teachers that influenced your life, that were theosophical teachers. What about other spiritual teachers that have influenced your life?
Well, a major one was Mother Amachi, Mata Amritanandamayi. She came from India and she was called the Hugging Saint. So she would come and go to various cities on her tour. And there was a large auditorium that had to be used. And actually, I learned about her when in my 20s, when I knew the person who was having her live at his home when she was at the doing the workshop. So it was a really small room at the beginning at the Quaker Center, but then now it's huge rooms. And so what Mother Amachi does is there's some singing of Hindu songs, and then there's a little lecture on how to live with, a good, healthy life from Hindu principles. And then she would start darshan, where the whole thing is really darshan, but the darshan is where we'd line up and go slowly up and file by her and get a hug from her. So, and during the time she would hug us, she'd say a Hindu saying, and it was amazing, the clearing of your body to such peace and tranquility from that. And so that was a major experience and something that was wonderful. And that's getting in touch with your higher self. Sorry.
I was just going to say, nothing like being hugged by a saint.
Yeah.
That's an amazing experience. I've had one of her hugs myself. Very, very powerful. Yes, as a matter of fact, what I was doing was I was going through a really terrible relationship breakup, and it was just so terrible. And I went to her and I can't say that I got really high because I was so low, but I did go from here to here, but I wasn't in a space where I could go up that, but I needed a hug. And that was the perfect place to go, a hugging saint when you're really down and depressed. Maybe we all should be hugging saints, hugging, giving people hugs, people that want hugs. So talk to you a little bit about any kind of service work that you might have done. The Theosophical Order of Service, actually Theosophists don't often know this, but if you are a Theosophist and you're a member of the American Theosophical Association, then you are a member of the THOS. And we love for people to intentionally do projects, and we love for people to unintentionally do projects, because Blavatsky said that, altruism is theosophy, and she asked us to serve. She said that's one of the integral parts of the path. And so, one of the things that fits into your service is your book. And you wrote a book. I wish you would tell a little bit about how this book came about, and now, what you're doing in terms of service in sharing this book.
Perfect. I'm very happy to. Realizing the Self Within is my book. And so how this came about was when I started learning about Theosophy. Whenever I read something that I felt was just really important for me to remember, or a wonderful quote, I would take notes on it and put it in a Word file. And it was wonderful to reread those and keep those. And I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to use them for until some time came in 2000 where I had some time to think about a book that I kind of always in the back of my mind thought I would write, but I didn't know what I was going to write about at all. So I just went through all my files of notes and quotes and notable things. And whenever I read something, I'd get kind of a little prompt within, or a little squiggle, like that's important. And so I would put a notation by it. And then
let me just stop you right there. When you talk about this little squiggle, you're talking about your intuition.
Yes. It was just a knowing. And it was weird, like a prompt is probably another way to say it well. I just knew that this was important. And of course, I didn't know
it was
what I was doing at the time.
It was like being guided.
Yeah, yeah.
where you needed to go. Okay.
Mhm.
Keep on.
So then you sure. So then when I was well, I had read all this these notes, and then I wondered how I could organize it. And there were so many pages on the computer, and I didn't. This was back when we didn't have computers very long. So what I did is I printed them all off and I cut them all up. So I had all these small little pieces of paper and I put them all over my kitchen and even on the floor according to topics. And miraculously, that turned into a table of contents for my book. So in my book, I cover the levels of consciousness in a human being, and I speak about karma and the purpose of life, and then really how to overcome some of the problems of the personal everyday self, some of the things that Harry taught us, and then how to get in touch with the higher self and develop your intuition. And
Well, it sounds like a book that all Theosophists should have for sure. And just keep on and tell us what what you have done with the book, or if you have any more on the process of the book, please share that. And then where that is today.
Sure, sure. Well, it's a very simple book. So Theosophists understand all the concepts of it, but I've wrote it for people just wanting to learn about Theosophy in a really easy to read, understandable way without deep kind of topics being presented with Sanskrit terms that can sometimes be confusing. So what I've done is I've republished it now again, and I'm making it available to TS lodges around the country, and there's been some sent to Europe. And then I also have a bunch of copies for David Bruce's program. David Bruce is the National Secretary of Theosophical Society in America. And there's a program for prisoners to ask for theosophical books and to study them with a mentor. So that's basically what I can see that I wrote it for. So very happy to give copy to them.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, are they studying the books with a mentor, or are the books just given them to read? I mean, how is that working?
Either one. The books can be sent out or they can be given a mentor, and that's a volunteer from the Theosophical Society to help them study and learn. So it's wonderful. The kinds of chokes me up again, the outreach, just really a beautiful program.
So the book in itself really was a service. It was your service. Like you said, those divas need a human touch to make things come into being. They need our hands, they need our organization, and they need our production to be able to get those ideas out. So thank you so much for doing that. And it's really quite amazing, the prison program, that you're donating books for the prison program. That is never thought of that. I know we have many different authors in the Theosophical Society, and that's probably something that someone could do for a service project, is to donate books. And of course, any of the lodges can donate money toward the project, so that we could keep purchasing literature for the prisoners. That's a wonderful program. Well, now currently you are in the Seattle Lodge. Is that true?
Right. Yes.
Are you an officer in there, or have you been?
Yes, I have been an officer or on the board. I've been secretary a lot, writing minutes of our board meetings. They also have a wonderful library. It's just really great in Seattle. I've been a library volunteer or a meditation leader. So it's just been a wonderful lodge. That's where I learned so much.
So you're fortunate to have a lodge where you are. Do y'all meet weekly, monthly, bi-monthly?
Sure. Yes. Every Sunday, there's a public program. There's also meditation groups on the weekend. Then we have a Wednesday night study group for the Theosophists, and new people can join and just get a taste for what it would be if they would want to join the Theosophical Society itself. They can come to the members meetings and study with us.
That is a lot. You have one every week?
Yes.
And well, twice when you have one on Wednesday and you have meditations, that is an active lodge. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a whole lot. Well, I'm wondering if you have attended any of the Federation meetings in any of the conferences, or you've probably even spoken at some of them.
So, well, the Northwest Federation was active a lot, and it would go in and out of what we would call Pralaya. So I was active with that. And before the internet, oh, maybe hundreds of people would come to a speaker that the lodges from the Northwest would set up, and they were really good. And so, but now we're in Pralaya. I think there are so many programs with the Theosophical Society of America that there's little less of a need. So, yeah, so that's also. And then I've been to Adyar for the TSA, participating with the international organization for the convention there. That was a wonderful experience. Good speakers, and the setting there. It's in India. I recommend it for people to go.
So is it very difficult? I've never been to one of the conventions, and I will mention that they take place right at the end of December, beginning of January every year. And if somebody actually wanted to go to one of those conventions, is it difficult to find places to stay? Do you stay on campus? What is the setup there?
Yeah, they do have some housing on campus, and then there's other places nearby that can be used for lodging. And it's pretty easy to find out now. When I went in 94, we were lucky to stay in Leadbeater Chambers. So Charles Leadbeater is one of the theosophical writers. But anyway, I could stay there. And then they have large campus there with an amphitheater for the program. It was really wonderful.
You mentioned here that I'm going to change a little bit the topic, and then you mentioned that you were able to go to the Parliament of the World Religions in 1993. That was in Chicago. You want to say anything about that?
Well, it was wonderful. The TS participated in that as well. But in 93 in Chicago, I participated in the 100th year anniversary from 1893, the first Parliament of the World's Religions. And that's where East met West in terms of philosophical and religious study. It was fantastic. So the Parliament there was so well attended, and all these workshops. They had a book out of all the things you had as options to attend. Several buildings were used. It was fabulous. Then they had some follow-up parliaments, and one that was very memorable was in South Africa. And I just want to mention Nelson Mandela came to speak, the president of South Africa, who was imprisoned for so many years under the old apartheid, that kind of situation before they were independent of English rule. And he was so welcoming. He reached over the podium, greeted us with this warmth and gratitude that we were there. Just never forget his oneness, the oneness I felt with him. It was just incredible.
Well, I've never been to an international Parliament of the World's Religions. I've been to some in the United States, well, Canada, and I'm just wondering, I know that we were represented in the ones that I went to, the Theosophical Society, but were we represented there? Did we have like a booth? Were we part of the one in South Africa?
I don't think so. There wasn't enough. That was in, I think, maybe 2000 or so. And actually, I don't remember, because I was still a bit of a newbie in a way. I wasn't as active kind of with the TSA. So sorry, I just don't know. That they do now, though. There have been other parliaments, and like in the Salt Lake City one, and several people were there. And then, oh yes, there were talks given by the TS. Of course, what am I thinking? Yeah, and the Dalai Lama.
In South Africa, you mean?
Well, now in South Africa, it was a smaller group of us because it was quite a distance to travel. But yeah, I'm sure the TS was there. just
Well, of
forgetting
course, we
that.
know that in the first Parliament of the World's Religion that Annie Besant was quite the hit,
Yes,
and
yes.
I guess Vivekananda as well. So those are very powerful things. I think that these parliaments are in line with a theosophical perspective and also the goal that the Mahatmas put in front of us as humanity to really uplift humanity and put us in a Godward direction to up our energy, our frequency, our vibration, so that we can move into a higher dimension, one certainly of more kindness, compassion, love, and maybe intelligence as well.
Oh, well put. And just well put. That's great.
So I think that I think that's about it. Is there anything that we've left out of your spiritual journey that we haven't mentioned that you might
Well,
want to speak to?
sure. Yeah, just briefly, I think that Theosophy helps so much with coping with life things, situations that come up. Certainly we can enjoy the fun and the loving aspects of life, but the difficult ones, just briefly, my son at age 22, Kyle, passed away from lupus, and Theosophy basically saved my life with knowing and understanding the broader purpose of life and about karma and reincarnation, and just seeing that there was a divine purpose I felt for my being his mother and for him to have a shorter life. So that's just a personal note. I just totally recommend Theosophy, any kind of study or participation, certainly in any of the lodges. And just, it helped me tremendously.
That's a powerful example. I think that quite a number of theosophists have lost a child, and to be able to look at things from a higher perspective certainly doesn't cure the grief, but it certainly helps the understanding a little bit more. Thank you for sharing that personal note. I appreciate that. So thank you so much for participating today. I appreciate everything. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Take
sure
care.
welcome. Wonderful to be here.